I don't think anyone in Australia would disagree with the first part of my motion today. Governments have been failing our veterans for decades. Not only have they failed our veterans, they have failed their families. Over the last 40 years, nearly 60 reports and 750 recommendations have been largely ignored. And Defence was still refusing to hand over documents to the Royal Commission whilst it was ongoing. The work of the Royal Commission in Defence and Veteran Suicide must be a game changer. Defence and the government cannot be allowed to cherry-pick the recommendations that work for them. All the recommendations need to be carefully examined and implemented as soon as possible. If Minister Keogh and Minister Miles are serious about making real change for our veterans, then they need urgently to get on with publishing a timeline of recommendations. And here's a tip. Because you could start with this tomorrow. I would start with the 18 recommendations that go straight to the conduct and operation of the military justice system, the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force, the IGADF. Minister Miles knows all about the IGADF. He's been sitting on a report that was delivered to him 6 months ago. 6 months ago. 3 months to write a report, 6 months to sit on it. 6 months. The military justice system is there to make sure that veterans placed under investigation are treated fairly. In other words, it's there to make sure veterans get justice. But the military justice system has failed to deliver justice for veterans since it started over 20 years ago. Rather than delivering justice and looking after our serving men and women, the chain of command has misused and abused the legal processes to target veterans. And the IGADF signed off on those abuses, often while still reviewing cases. It was only after lawyers, after acting pro bono, managed to have the IGADF reviews reviewed that the cases were found to be an abusive process and an attack on our veterans. Recommendation 30 from the Royal Commission's final report goes straight to the heart of this, naming up their weaponisation of the military justice system and noting that serving personnel were incorrectly charged, and when a defending officer made representations to get the charges dropped, they were then persecuted themselves, destroying their careers. Here are just a couple of examples. Recent ones. A soldier, let's call him Tom, who has completed multiple combat tours in the Middle East. Tom put in a complaint about his chain of command. An inquiry officer was appointed, but instead of holding the senior officers to account, the inquiry officer exonerated the chain of command, made adverse findings against Tom, and referred his case to the IGADF for review. In other words, referred it to their mates, because that's how it works, for a review. And would you believe it? Yep, sadly I do. The IGADF backed in the inquiry officer's findings and upheld the adverse findings against Tom. After years of fighting this, the last few years, Tom retained the services of Dr. Kolomitz and then went back to the IGADF and demanded an independent review for the original review. The IGADF ignored Dr. Kolomitz's repeated calls for another look at Tom's case. So Dr. Kolomitz was forced to call them out in the media just to get their attention. Finally, the IGADF looked more closely at Tom's case and came back and said, yes, the original findings were terribly wrong. Tom received a pathetically small amount of money, nothing that would fix the torment and mental health impacts he had to endure, or has had to endure. Let me give you another example. Another multiple tour combat veteran, let's call him Fred, left the Army and went to the Army Reserve and became a tactical police officer. Fred was subjected to ongoing weaponised administration process by his chain of command. When Fred went to the IGADF, they did nothing. But when the chain of command found out, they took more adverse actions against Fred. The adverse actions they can take includes everything from a note on your personal file to rank determination and losses in pay. Fred also went and found Dr. Kolomitz, who had each action overturned, but then, wait for it, the chain of command took away Fred's rank. Oh, this guy's getting better. And Fred only found out after looking up his personal file on the Army's computer system. Dr. Kolomitz and Fred went back to the Army again and questioned this decision. Army was made to give him back his rank, and they handed him his rank slide with one hand, and a moment later handed Fred his termination of service. This is how we deal with whistleblowers in the military. We brick them, we do whatever we can, we give them one thing and then we take from the other until we've worn them down to nothing. That's what the military abuse system does, the military justice abuse system, as I like to call it, does to our military members, especially those ones of lower ranks. Dr. Colomits took this up and he took as far as the Army headquarters, but instead of looking at the chain of command, once again, never look at the chain of command, God forbid, their clearly inappropriate behaviour in Fred's case, they appointed an inquiry officer to look at what had happened, but excluded putting the conduct of any individual in the frame. The Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force, our military justice system, knows all about this case, and they still have done nothing. 3 years at a Royal Commission, they should have spent more time working on this case rather than trying to intimidate me at the Royal Commission and bringing in the heavy hitters, because that is what they're about. That is what they're about. They are disgusting, absolutely disgusting. I mean, Dr. Colomits, like other lawyers out there, has dealt with soldiers who were subject to acts of indecency, and when they reported this, investigations were either not forthcoming or were bungled. And we're not just talking one or two here. There's hundreds of them. Many others are aware that they are serving members who have committed sexual assault, including rape, and they are still serving. I'm also aware, or was aware, when I went through the 33 folders of defence abuse, which were just startlingly disgraceful, that names in there, I had known of those people when I was serving before I got out. Do you know what else I find more distressing than anything? Simply nothing come out of all that, or Dr. Gary Rumble's report, or anything like that, that those senior commander officers never, and I found this out in Esther, never asked to see those 33 folders of defence abuse. They didn't want to see them because they didn't want to fix it. And I think that says it all. I think that says it all. But if any of them lost pay, rank or anything else, or their careers, no, absolutely not. Gary Rumble's review in 2006 had a list of recommendations that would have fixed any issues, but like everything else, the reports have been ignored. Recommendation 44, also directed at the IGADF, suggests that the military justice system should develop a workforce plan that includes a review of necessary skills, expertise and qualifications. Wow. Imagine making these decisions on veterans' lives and you don't have qualifications. What a shameful, shameful act. It absolutely blows me away. How can a professional organisation not already have a plan to make sure that people who are investigating are properly qualified? And you wonder why you've got problems with the military justice system and its abuse. Abuse. The next recommendation, 45, should be at the top of Minister Miles's to-do list. It says that the Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force should improve the transparency and accountability of their office. Imagine our own legal system in defence can't be transparent and accountable. Oh, geez. That's where we've got to. It's frightening. By making it clear its standard operating procedures and setting key performance indicators related to the timelessness of assessments. In other words, they need to give veterans some idea of how long a review or an inquiry will take, because that will determine whether or not a veteran will tip a veteran over the edge. Not just leave them in limbo, and in some cases for months and years on their decision-making. Again, you would think this would be an obvious thing to fix, especially to an organisation that is supposed to meter out justice. But I don't think that is the IGADF's main role. I think the main purpose is to cover up for senior command. Well, no more. No more. This has to stop, and the fact that the Royal Commissioners, targeted 18 of their recommendations at our military justice system should be enough of a wake-up call. I'd say the military justice system is cooked. She's cooked. She's finished. She's finished. It's over. On Monday, when the final report was tabled, Defence Minister Miles said, and I quote, we have been working to deliver real change each and every day, end quote. He also said that, and I quote, we will now work through the recommendations in a timely and methodical manner, end quote. That's government spin you veterans for saying, hey, well, they'll get around to it. So just so you know, that's your normal spin up here. That's how it works. You'd think that they would have had some sort of timeline. They were given an interim report. They've had people sitting during all these Royal Commissions that they would have been picking up on this. You have to ask what we've been paying these people for, whether they're from DVA or Defence, to sit in at every one of these public Royal Commission meetings, and quite frankly, you haven't got a timeline. I find that quite disgraceful, to be honest. I mean, it's not that difficult. You've got 122 recommendations, all that stuff come out during the Royal Commission. So as much as I'd like to give you veterans some hope before the weekend, I'm just not going to do that because I can't. It's not good enough, and the government, the Mr Miles and Mr Keogh, like I said, have been quite aware of this report coming. It has come to a point that I should not have to, but I am going to put forward a motion to push them along. They should have been ready with some sort of timeline. Instead of doing that, Minister Miles releases his response to the Brereton inquiry, stripping some senior command of the citations, but not touching the generals. Once again, the top brass gets off the hook. If Minister Miles and Minister Keogh really meant all those nice things they said to the media and the veteran community on Monday, then they will get on with publishing that timeline and reassuring the veteran community that they are serious about honouring their service and caring for our veterans. I do notice, so you veterans know, that the government, about the spin stuff is the government has tried to rechange my motion, just so we're all very aware of that. So for me, I had called on the government to urgently publish a comprehensive timeline outlining the implementations of all recommendations of the final report, ensuring that reforms for service personnel and their families are carried out in a timely and effective manner. To get your government of Australia to vote for this motion, they have changed that and watered it down, and it calls on the government, this is what they put, they need these words so they look pretty, calls on the government to urgently work towards publicly releasing its response to all recommendations of the final report to ensure that the recommended reforms aimed at supporting service personnel and their families can be implemented in a timely, effective manner. So I would just say to you veterans, take a deep breath, because I can assure you, if you thought the fight was on during the Royal Commission, the fight begins today. The fight begins today for justice for you. And it's going to be a really rocky road. It's going to be a rocky road. I don't think it has been helpful that all the emotional stuff of putting that Royal Commission out on Monday, all that emotional stuff, and that they're still trying to deal with a couple of days later, that you come out and the best thing you can do is say, hey, we've got 9 people we're going to take citations of when it comes to the alleged war crimes. Jesus, that was a nice slap in the face. Thanks for coming. And the veterans are going, how come? What's happened to the generals? No responsibility for them either. This is not helpful. I have to ask why you would have kept this thing for 4 years to look at it, and you released it. You decide which idiot decided to release that today. Do you know how harmful that has been today? You couldn't wait till the next sitting? You couldn't wait till the next sitting. You seriously, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. And this is what bothers me more than anything. You would never have pulled an act like that today. That is shameful. Shameful. If I lose one veteran's life over the weekend because of this, your Defence Minister, I tell you what, I expect his resignation. What a stupid thing to do today. How hurtful. Don't worry, the generals and the top end done you over. They've been doing you over for years, and we're going to do you and throw you diggers under the bus for the alleged war crimes as well, and hold none of them big boys accountable. Straight across their face. Here we go. She's on. Honestly. She starts Monday. It all starts Monday, and you'll realise on Monday why. And it's coming at you, and I'm coming at you. The gloves are back on, and it's going to be a fight from hell. But it is a fight I'm not moving from. I won't move today, and I won't move tomorrow. For you veterans out there, some of us in this chamber have your back. Don't you forget that. And the whole time, because we have you.